Legendary Collection. This is a beloved set by TCG players and collectors alike. It made a lot of cards from Base, Jungle, Fossil, and Rocket more obtainable, a little bit cheaper in the case of some cards, and potentially introduced a later generation of Pokemon TCG fans to those cards for the first time. It added new layers of collectible little aspects to classic cards by adding things like reverse holos and secret rare box toppers. But here's the thing, Legendary Collection stinks and I don't like it. So let's talk about how Legendary Collection was a Wizards of the Coast metagame crashing cash grab and overall mistake. Legendary Collection released in May 2002 at the end of the 4 Neo sets: Genesis, Discovery, Revelation, and Destiny. The standard format was changing from Rocket on to Neo on, which made all of the cards from Base, Jungle, Fossil, Rocket, and the 2 gem sets unavailable for competitive play. So Wizards of the Coast wanted to expand the card pool beyond just those 4 Neo sets and the Black Start promos by reprinting select classic cards to spice up the variety of decks available, seemingly. The marketing for Legendary Collection had this to say: the best of the pack are back, in foils too. They're big, they're bad, they're your all-time favorite Pokemon from the Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Red Game Boy games. Back in action in the all-new Pokemon Legendary Collection card set. Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, and many more of the most powerful Pokemon ever are on the prowl again. And if that isn't exciting enough, special foil versions of each Pokemon in the Legendary Collection expansion can be found in random boosters. So right off the bat, it comes across as, hey kid, you know all those old cards you have? Well, they're back. And if you want the shiniest, best version of all of those cards, you'll have to buy a ton of packs to get them all. Which wasn't new to randomly assigned booster packs. In fact, that's pretty much the entire point of booster packs. What I don't like is that a lot of these cards were being printed for the 3rd time, but being sold like they were brand new. The first prints being from either Base Set or Jungle, then again in Base Set 2, and now in Legendary Collection with randomly assigned reverse holofoils that can make even the shittiest card into a holo rare. In many ways, it felt like Wizards of the Coast was trying to revive Pokemania for the TCG, though that time had definitely come and gone. Most kids that went bonkers for Base Charizard had already moved on to Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh!, which had just released its first set in North America, or away from card games entirely. So, what, are 12-year-olds suddenly supposed to be nostalgic for trading cards that they liked when they were 8, just a few years earlier? That's not how nostalgia works. The set description also entices potential buyers with Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise, the most sought-after base set cards by children influenced by Pokemania. However, this is a bit misleading since the Blastoise they're referring to is Dark Blastoise from Rocket, because the base set Blastoise would have been too problematic to reintroduce into the metagame due to the busted mechanic of Rain Dance. So it's not really all of your favorite big, powerful cards back at it again. It was basically whatever Wizards thought they could rehash and still sell packs with without damaging the pretty good metagame that they had set up with the 4 Neo sets. Base set Charizard and Venusaur were included because they would sell packs, but they weren't game breaking. They were safe, which is the opposite of what competitive players look for in new sets. Base Charizard was so safe, in fact, it would never see competitive play. It was basically just a carrot to dangle for collectors and dumb kids with money. Or dumb adults with money. Speaking of which, a lot of support and hype around this set comes from hardcore collectors. Nostalgia for base set era drives a lot of collecting, particularly for PSA graded cards. So when you take early cards and increase the collectability of them by layering in levels of rarity, you can easily create obsessions among collectors. For Legendary Collection, compiling a full set means 1 non-holo copy of each card, 1 reverse holo copy of each card, and a copy of each of the box toppers. So the 110 card set becomes a 224 card set. as Dark Blastoise, Dark Raichu, Charizard, and Mewtwo received special variant foils as secret rare box toppers. And for PSA collectors, that means obtaining a Gem Mint copy of each of those 224 cards. Getting a Gem Mint means that it is a perfect 10. It is pristine, as crisp and fresh as it was coming straight out of the pack or straight off of the production line before being sealed in a PSA case. As such, PSA graded Gem Mint 10 Pokemon cards are among the most expensive and hard to find. For all of these reasons, Legendary Collection has become a focal point of PSA collecting because it is a challenging mountain to climb. It is an endeavor to seek out all of these cards in high grades in all of their variants. The Legendary Collection Charizard that I've had up on the screen here has become somewhat of a holy grail for PSA collectors, with a PSA 10 starting at around $2,900 for just the box topper foil, and around $7,000 for a normal reverse foil card, as those PSA 10 grades are extremely difficult to get off of cards that were printed in 2002. Now let's move on to the competitive ramifications of Legendary Collection. The majority of the cards in this set are just unusable in any format. So don't try to sell me a Legendary Collection, but include this fucking Kabutops. They didn't even include the good Electrode. For that matter, they reprinted the worst of the 3 Mewtwo's available. Alakazam was useful and added some variety to the metagame, I'll admit. Flareon was also useful as a great coverage card to hit Steel types for weakness, using any type of energy that deck had. Fossil Gengar had some use, I guess, in spread decks like Dark Crobat. Not really, though. Fossil Haunter was really more useful than the Gengar in Baby Porter, as maybe an alternate attacker or damage sponge. Venusaur was fun to play, especially since grass decks were dominant for a while in Neo-On. Exeggutor would have been a great addition if it wasn't completely outclassed by another Exeggutor just 2 sets later. Dodrio was nifty, but ultimately Double Gust was easier to use and took up less space. The real godsends in Legendary Collection were reprints of trainers. Breeder made Stage 2 decks more usable than ever. Trader increased the consistency of decks that included lots of techs and counters, which was most meta decks. Scoop Up greatly helped stall, and big basic decks survive against the powerful Stage 2 Pokemon that were reigning supreme in the Neo-On format. And finally, Boss's Way was a major help for Dark Pokemon decks, as it allowed them to get set up faster and compensate for the really low HP that they had. And that's about it. So if I'm straining to think of 10 cards that were competitively viable out of the 110 in your set that claims to have the best of the pack, well, there's probably a problem there. As I mentioned earlier, the cards that were truly the best of the pack were left out because they could potentially destabilize a metagame that was maybe the most balanced and versatile as it had ever been. So in that regard, it was probably for the best to leave out cards like Blastoise, Wigglytuff, Chansey, and Mr. Mime. But if that's your rationale, Wizards of the Coast, then why the fuck would you reprint Muck? Muck was one of the main contributing factors to the base Rocket metagame becoming stale and boring, making most people not even want to play. A lot of players dropped off around that point because of cards like Muck, and it's one of the most frequently banned cards from base Neo and base Skyridge custom formats, showing you how problematic this card can be. Aside from maybe energy removal, Muck is the single worst card that could have been reprinted for the Neo-On metagame, and somehow, here it is in Legendary Collection. Introducing Muck to Neo-On flattened the versatility and variety in the metagame. Without the use of Pokemon powers, a ton of otherwise competitive decks became nothing. Now every deck had to include at least one way to knock out a Grimer as fast as possible, or else prepare for a long game and a probable loss. So to remain competitive, a lot of players just had to resort to using powerless decks like Steelix and Kingdra once again, instead of having fun with unique powers that really spiced up gameplay. and what could be accomplished within the Neo sets and beyond. However, because of Muck, all of that creativity was limited. I love the Wizards of the Coast era of the Pokemon TCG. That is what this entire channel is. But I also hate a lot about how Wizards handled the Pokemon TCG. The way I see it, they never really gave the TCG the attention and care it deserved. They used it primarily as a way to print money, which worked great for them for a while, which I get. They are a business after all. But one of the reasons Magic the Gathering has remained popular and had a huge following, as well as being a huge moneymaker, is because Wizards consistently innovated with the game, paying close attention to playtesting, balancing, and incorporating fresh ideas regularly. The specific details to Wizards of the Coast losing the Pokemon TCG contract are still unknown, but this mishandling may have been a reason. To the Japanese Pokemon Company, Base Set 2 and Legendary Collection may have been viewed as greedy cash grabs that relied on gimmicks like reverse holos to sell the same product over and over, while Japanese players were given brand new sets, set after set, in the form of new promos, vending machine cards, movie decks, and so on. On the flip side, it could have also been the case that the Pokemon Company was being stingy with all of these new toys and placed limitations on which set and individual cards were allowed for translation and distribution. Wizards of the Coast did state interest in bringing the vending series and the Versus series over to North America, so they may have wanted that innovation and care that they could have put into the Pokemon TCG, but they may have been restricted by their foreign partners. At the same time, they still really dropped the ball on official rulings, showing that they never really understood the game to begin with, so I remain judgmental, because I also really dislike a lot of design choices made by Wizards of the Coast. One of the reasons I used mainly reverse holo images to showcase these cards as I talked about them was to show how ugly and unreadable they were as reverse holos. I myself don't own very many Legendary Collection cards because I hate the way they look. I don't want to own any copies of reverse holo cards because they look like a mess and they lose their playability and functionality when you can't even read what's printed on the card. And I'm not trying to be too hard on Wizards of the Coast because, like I said, we don't have all of the information available. We don't know what relations were like between the North American and Japanese branches of distribution for the TCG, and Wizards did do a lot of good things for the TCG. But I just feel that Legendary Collection was a misfire, hence all of the rambling I've been doing for this video, both complaining that the set didn't include very many good cards, but also complaining that one of the cards was too good. I get it. Let me know what you think below. What are your opinions on Legendary Collection? I would love to get a discussion going and would love to hear arguments in defense of this set. This little set critique of Legendary Collection is meant to be a stepping stone into Neo-On, as Legendary Collection was a pretty big part of the Neo-On format. So stay tuned to the channel for a flood of Neo-On content coming soon, including several of the cards mentioned in this video. So, until then, bye.